In the shadow of Joseph Stalin, there was one man feared even more than the dictator himself. Lavrentiy Beria, Stalin's iron fist, his most trusted executioner, and his most dangerous ally. Beria ruled not with armies, but with silence, with shadows, and with fear. Entire families vanished in the night, and those who entered his secret prisons were never seen again. Today, the ruins of those prisons still stand, and those who dare to enter say, the terror has never left. Doors slam on their own, whispers echo in the darkness, and some believe Beria himself is still there. Born in 1899, Lavrentiy Beria arose quickly through the ranks of Soviet power, smart, ruthless, and absolutely loyal to Stalin. He became head of the NKVD, the secret police. But Beria was more than just Stalin's servant. He was the man who controlled the prisons, the interrogations, the torture, and the disappearances. His name alone was enough to break a man's will. People whispered, better to die on the battlefield than to fall into Beria's hands. He was feared not just as a politician, but as a predator. Under Beria, the Soviet Union was covered with a web of prisons and labor camps. Some were official, many were not. Hidden deep in forests, behind tall concrete walls, Beria's special facilities were designed for one purpose: to break the human spirit. Inside, cells no bigger than a closet, walls dripping with condensation, screams echoing through corridors at night. Prisoners spoke of strange phenomena, footsteps with no source, lights flickering, even when there was no electricity, and the chilling sense that something was always watching them. Locals avoided these places. Even guards confessed to hearing voices in the dark. One of Beria's most infamous sites stood in the heart of Moscow. Behind plain grey walls, it looked ordinary from the outside, but inside, it was a labyrinth of terror. Entire wings were sealed off. No one entered, no one left. Prisoners described being taken to interrogation chambers, where strange devices stood against the walls. Some never returned. Others came back broken, unable to speak of what they saw. Even today, explorers who sneak into the abandoned corridors report sudden drops in temperature, cell doors slamming without warning, and the overwhelming feeling of being followed. One investigator claimed he heard a whisper behind him, but when he turned, the corridor was empty. Beria's prisons became more than places of death. They became legends of horror. Locals tell stories of glowing figures pacing the hallways at night. Others say they hear the sound of typewriters, the same machines used to sign death sentences, echoing from locked offices. One tale speaks of a cursed interrogation room. Anyone who enters feels an invisible pressure on their chest, as if the room itself is trying to suffocate them. Explorers say cameras and flashlights often fail there, batteries draining instantly. But the most disturbing legend is that of Beria himself. Some believe his restless spirit wanders the corridors, searching for victims, forever trapped in the prisons he created. After Stalin's death in 1953, Beria thought he would rule the Soviet Union. Instead, his enemies struck first. He was arrested, tried, and executed. But his legacy, the prisons, the camps, the fear, lived on. The Soviet government tried to erase his name, but you cannot erase terror, and you cannot bury thousands of restless souls. Today, some of Beria's prisons lie in ruins. Others have been repurposed, turned into offices or storage buildings. But the darkness remains. Historians still debate. Was Beria just Stalin's servant, or was he a monster in his own right? What is certain is this: he turned fear into a weapon more powerful than any tank. And for those who visit the places he left behind, the past is never truly gone. It lingers, it waits, and sometimes it still watches. So why do these stories matter? Because they remind us that evil does not just vanish with time. The walls of Beria's prisons are still standing, the voices are still there, and the shadows have not left. When you step into those halls, you realize something terrifying. History is not just written in books. It lives in places, it breathes in silence, and sometimes it follows you home. Prisoners of Beria were not just numbers, they were lives torn apart, futures erased. Writers, artists, scientists, former officers, anyone could be taken, often in the dead of night, blindfolded, thrown into the cold shadows of a cell no larger than a coffin. The journey began with silence, footsteps on stone, doors slamming, whispers in corridors. These were the first sounds of terror. Some prisoners recalled the cold seeping into their bones, the damp smell of concrete walls, and the loneliness that weighed heavier than chains. Days and nights merged into one endless nightmare. Sleep was stolen, meals were sparse, hope was forbidden. For many, reality itself became a distant memory. Shadows danced on walls, sometimes forming faces, sometimes whispering threats, leaving the mind questioning whether the horrors were real or conjured by fear. A former prisoner described being left alone 4 days. The silence so intense that the sound of his own heartbeat became unbearable. Others were forced into rooms where the lights flickered unnaturally, shadows shifting in ways that defied explanation. Every sound, every echo became a weapon. Every step in the corridor could signal the end. And through it all, the name Beria haunted them, whispered among the terrified, a ghostly presence that seemed to linger behind every locked door. Beria's interrogations were not merely physical, they were psychological masterpieces of terror. Rooms designed to break a human spirit awaited every prisoner. Some chambers appeared empty, yet the air itself seemed to press against the chest. Chairs with restraints lined the walls, alongside instruments that were meant to intimidate rather than wound. Though fear itself was punishment enough, guards employed tricks to disorient and terrify. Prisoners might be forced to watch another suffer, to hear their screams, or to believe that loved ones had vanished forever. Sleep deprivation became a slow torment, isolation a constant companion, uncertainty a silent predator. Even the simplest question could become a trap. Every word spoken might seal a fate. Some prisoners reported strange phenomena during interrogations: cold spots in the room, shadows that moved independently, whispers that seemed to echo from nowhere, occurrences that blurred the line between human cruelty and something darker. Beria's genius was in knowing that fear could be as lethal as any weapon. It was a science of terror, honed to perfection, leaving survivors broken, haunted, and forever changed. Beyond the city limits, Beria's secret labor camps stretched into forests, swamps, and remote wilderness. Barracks rotted under relentless winters, fences of barbed wire cut across the land, silent sentinels for those condemned to endure the cold and hunger. Guards patrolled with a quiet brutality, their presence a constant reminder that escape was impossible. The prisoners left traces of their lives in small ways: a scratched symbol on a wall, a diary hidden beneath the floor, a sketch etched with a fingernail. Some wrote messages of hope, others left pleas for mercy, though they knew none would come. The wilderness itself seemed to swallow their cries. Animals avoided the areas, and locals believed the forests held the echoes of suffering. Even decades later, explorers entering these camps report unease, footsteps in empty corridors, doors that swing on their own, shadows lingering in corners where light should reach. Rivers run cold, yet whispers are said to echo from beneath the ice. Some claim to have found objects moved or missing, as if unseen hands continue to watch. The ruins are silent, yet they speak of pain, of cruelty, of a darkness that refuses to fade. The stories of Beria's vengeance became legends, whispered among those who lived near the ruins. One tale tells of a guard who defied orders, only to disappear without trace, never to be seen again. Another speaks of a prisoner who survived torture, yet years later claimed to feel Beria's presence following him through forests and empty streets. Local children were warned not to enter abandoned barracks. Travelers avoided certain ruins, claiming animals fled before them, as if instinctively sensing danger. Some say that at night, whispers rise from the darkness, reciting the names of those who perished. Others see glowing figures pacing corridors, shadows that linger long after the person has passed. The land itself, it seems, remembers, a silent witness to atrocities that cannot be erased. Even today, Those who dare to explore these sites report an overwhelming sensation of being watched. Cameras fail, flashlights flicker, and temperatures drop inexplicably. Some have fled in terror, claiming they saw someone standing at the end of a corridor, only for the space to be empty when they looked again. It is as if the past refuses to stay buried. Beria was executed, and yet his shadow lingers. The camps, the prisons, the fear he instilled, they did not vanish with his death. Historians debate his motives, his loyalties, and his cruelty, but the legacy is undeniable. Fear became his instrument, terror his language. He transformed punishment into an art form, leaving marks on the land, on history, and on the minds of those who survived. Some prisons have been repurposed, others remain abandoned, slowly decaying under snow, rain, and the passage of time. Yet the darkness that pervaded them seems to endure. Visitors report hearing whispers, doors closing without cause, and shadows moving in ways that defy explanation. The past is alive in these walls. It breathes, it waits, it watches. Even when walking away, one cannot shake the sensation that history follows, that the echoes of pain, cruelty, and despair linger, carried on the wind, in the cold stone, in the empty corridors. For those who step inside, the lesson is clear. Evil does not vanish with time. It leaves a trace, a dark imprint that waits for the curious, the brave, and the unwary.